morning and welcome back to Watching World Talks here on TVP World. Kamala Harris has run a remarkable campaign, the shortest in modern political history. She concluded her final speech by saying, "We finish as we started, with optimism, with energy, with joy." Will she become the first female president of the United States, or will the White House go to Donald Trump? We'll find out soon enough. However, let's stop here for a moment and see what each of these outcomes would mean for Ukraine, Poland, and the CEE in general. For more, I have Michał Piękoś, editor-in-chief of the Dziennik Trybuna, joining me right now. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us. Much appreciated.
Good morning.
So let me start with a quote from Radosław Sikorski. Polish government is prepared for both outcomes in the US elections. What does it mean? How agile can the Polish government be? Yeah, go ahead.
It means that the Polish government is trying to avoid the mistake and the grave error of the previous Polish government, especially decisions made by President Duda, who threw his whole weight behind the candidacy of Donald Trump when he was running against Joe Biden. And then that obviously backfired really badly because Biden won the election and Trump lost. That also put a strain from the very first day on the relationship between Biden, White House, and the Polish government. So now Radosław Sikorski and the government led by Donald Tusk is doing what it ought to do, so to stay neutral and not to bid on any of the candidates. Especially given the situation that we are at the moment, when the race is very close and so very difficult to predict.
Right. So, I mean, let's speculate for a moment. What could Kamala Harris's possible victory mean for Poland? I mean, many are saying that this will be a continuation of the current administration's policy, of Biden's administration's policy. But would it really? Perhaps, I mean, she could distance herself from Biden and from the current line of the administration. And what about Donald Trump? What could happen then?
We don't really know what Kamala Harris' presidency towards Poland, Central Europe, and Ukraine would be exactly, but we have some clues, and I think it is fair to say that it would be similar along the lines of Joe Biden's. After all, she was the second person only after Joe Biden in his administration, and she was a central figure in shaping that relationship. However, we have to bear in mind that Joe Biden is a politician of a very particular era. He's a Euro-Atlanticist, a member of a generation of politicians who went into politics in the US in the 70s and made a huge career in 80s and 90s. And those were the American politicians who were the best politicians for us, for Central Europe, because they were so oriented towards Europe, towards Euro-Atlantic relationship. And they really saw that whole generation of politicians that Joe Biden represents. They saw the world peace, the world order, the world economy being structured along the lines of European American safety and prosperity. Kamala Harris is from a generation of more global politicians. Only first time she had been to Europe was when she became vice president. So that's very telling. So she wouldn't have the same sentiment towards Europe, towards Central Europe as Joe Biden, and she probably wouldn't put the same weight. But she is definitely a much safer choice than Donald Trump, who seems to be really hedging his bets on Putin rather than on Volodymyr Zelensky and his fight for Ukraine's freedom. And I think it is exactly the candidacy of Trump which raises real concerns in Ukraine and whose words really make Ukrainians' blood run really cold.
Right, and I came across an opinion that Donald Trump coming to power would signal a new era in the U.S., going back to isolationism that was there prior to the World War II. Do you agree with that statement?
Yes, Donald Trump is running his campaign on this very isolationist sentiment, which has been part of the Republican political sphere. And he's really running really wild with it. And really to the extent that he is saying that, well, US doesn't have to have hegemony in the world any longer. We can kind of step to the second place, and saying that let Europeans do their own fight, let Europeans do their own thing, and we don't have to be involved. Let's remind our viewers that he was instrumental in making sure that US Congress held up $61 billion aid package to Ukraine for many, many months before releasing the money, therefore causing great loss of military capability of the Ukrainian army. He also said that he's going to end war in Ukraine in a matter of days. No one really knows what that means, but it sounds really scary because it sounds like he will try to force Ukraine to some kind of peace deal. And also when you listen to Ukrainian officials, when they talk with journalists in private, they also are very concerned about this pro-Russian, anti-Ukrainian sentiment that Donald Trump has been presenting. Recently, Trump went as far as to blame Zelensky for starting the war with Russia. So some really, from our perspective, outrageous comments that Donald Trump has said, and very dangerous for Poland, very dangerous for the whole eastern flank of NATO.
Right, but what about those who are deeply dissatisfied with the glacial pace at which the aid is being delivered to Ukraine? They received only 10% of what was promised in terms of military aid. So some people are deeply dissatisfied with Joe Biden's administration. Do you think that they could perceive Trump as a chance, perhaps a little bit of a wild card?
Well, I think when you are in a war situation and you are fighting for your country's very survival, a wild card is the last thing you want to hedge your bets on. Obviously, Biden could have helped faster. Whether he could have helped more, that is really questionable. Because the thing is that in order to absorb new technologies into your army, in order to absorb new platforms such as tanks, vehicles, you need to undergo certain amount of training, and certain amount of time needs to be spent on integrating all those different parts of military. He could have done it a little bit faster, but nonetheless, when you look at the numbers, already hundreds of billions of US dollars that the US and EU has provided to Ukraine is outstanding. It is a great sum of money, and a sum of money that Donald Trump has criticized, saying that, listen, it is too much. We shouldn't be spending all this money on Ukraine. So now to say that somehow Donald Trump will do a 180-degree turn and become a huge supporter of Zelensky, of course it can happen. Donald Trump can do absolutely anything. He is unpredictable. As you rightly pointed, he is a bit of a wild card. But to hedge your bets on that, if you're Ukrainian, that sounds like a very, very risky strategy. And I don't think that is where the hopes of Zelensky and his team are really looking at the moment.
Right, especially with J.D. Vance as his VP, right? He has a strongly anti-aid for Ukraine stance. Now, let's go back to Polish diaspora living in the U.S. How significant are these voters, and what are their views?
Hugely significant, even to the point that Polish diaspora in Chicago was even mentioned during the presidential debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, because Pennsylvania, which is home to millions of members of Polish diaspora, is one of the swing states. And we know that polls in the US have been split historically more or less equally between the Republicans and Democrats. So really it is a crucial demographic, and Kamala Harris is really trying to play that Polish card, saying directly, and she also did that during the debate, she said directly to the members of the Polish community there, if you want Poland to be safe, if you want eastern flank of NATO to be safe, you need to vote for me, you need to vote for Democrats, because Trump means less security and means less predictability for Poland.
Right, and going, because we started our conversation with looking at Poland, I mean domestically here, but of course these divisions translate, right? I mean, you can see them in the US, you can see them also here back home. So do you think that perhaps if Trump wins, just for the sake of the argument, would that deepen divisions within our own country?
You see, that's a bit ironic, because the Polish right, who always, beat their drum about security, about our links with Ukraine, about having secure borders, the Polish right, who is saying all of that, at the same time is bidding for Donald Trump to win. So that is a very peculiar situation, and logically very difficult to explain. They want him to win because he's a right-wing politician, not because he's going to make Europe safer, because they know in Poland, the right in Poland knows, it's not going to make Poland, it's not going to make Europe safer. So I think the right in Poland is very cynical in their way of supporting the Republican candidate, looking at their own interests and not at the interest of Poland, because it is in the interest of law and justice and the right for Trump to win, because they simply get on with him better, because they have similar conservative, one could say outdated outlooks on a number of issues. But even they know deep inside that his election would be terrible for Poland, which is why when you listen to some right-wing politicians, privately they obviously support Trump very much, but in the media they try to be a little bit vague about it.
Right, a very important vote, I mean, for all of us. I guess we'll find out soon enough who wins. Michał Piękoś, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching World Talks. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World. News Bulletin coming up at the top of the hour.